September 26, 1983. While you were sleeping, or your parents were going about their normal lives, one man stood between humanity and complete annihilation. His name was Stanislav Petrov, and for reasons that should terrify you about how fragile our existence actually is, almost nobody knows his story. This isn't dramatic exaggeration. This is documented fact. One person, one decision, 5 minutes to choose, and the potential death of hundreds of millions of people hanging in the balance. And here's the part that should keep you up at night. This wasn't the only time. It's just the one we know about. Let me set the scene, because context matters when you're talking about the end of the world. 1983 was arguably the most dangerous year of the Cold War. Tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union weren't just high, they were apocalyptic. Just weeks before this incident, the Soviets had shot down a Korean passenger plane that strayed into their airspace, killing everyone on board, including a U.S. congressman. President Reagan had called the Soviet Union an evil empire in a speech that sent diplomatic relations into freefall. NATO was conducting military exercises that the Soviets genuinely believed might be cover for a real first strike. Both sides had their fingers on nuclear buttons, and the doctrine of mutually assured destruction meant that if one side launched, the other would launch everything they had in retaliation. There would be no winners, just ash. Stanislav Petrov was a lieutenant colonel in the Soviet Air Defense Forces, working the night shift at a bunker outside Moscow that monitored satellite systems designed to detect incoming American missiles. His job was simple and terrifying. Watch the early warning system, and if it detected a launch, report it immediately to Soviet High Command so they could decide whether to launch a counterstrike before American missiles destroyed their ability to retaliate. The Soviet military doctrine was clear. If America launched first, you had maybe 25 minutes before impact. Every second mattered. Hesitation could mean losing the war before you even fired back. At just past midnight, the alarms went off. The computer system, one of the most sophisticated pieces of technology the Soviet Union had ever built, reported that the United States had launched 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Not 1, 5. Each carrying multiple nuclear warheads capable of destroying entire cities. The system showed high reliability. The satellites had detected the missile launches. The protocol was unambiguous. Report the attack immediately. Let the chain of command make the decision. Petrov had minutes, maybe less, to inform his superiors. And here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean absolutely insane. Petrov looked at the data and made a choice that violated every piece of his training. He decided the system was wrong. Think about that for a second. Alarms screaming, computer showing incoming missiles, his entire military career training him to trust the technology and follow protocol. The fate of his country, his family, everyone he'd ever known potentially hanging on whether those missiles were real. And he decided it was a false alarm. Why? His reasoning was almost absurdly simple and completely brilliant. 5 missiles didn't make sense. If the United States was actually launching a first strike, they wouldn't send 5 missiles. They'd send hundreds, maybe thousands. They'd try to destroy the Soviet Union's ability to retaliate in one massive, coordinated attack. 5 missiles felt like a computer glitch, not an act of war. So Petrov reported a system malfunction instead of a missile attack. He sat there, watching the clock, knowing that if he was wrong, Soviet cities would start exploding in about 20 minutes, and he'd have just guaranteed his country couldn't fight back. 20 minutes passed. No explosions, no missiles. The system had malfunctioned. Later investigations showed that sunlight reflecting off clouds had been misinterpreted by the satellite sensors as missile launches, a technical error, the kind of thing that happens with complex systems. Except this complex system was designed to detect the end of the world. And it had just failed in exactly the way that could trigger nuclear war. Now here's the part that should genuinely disturb you. Petrov was initially praised, then quietly reprimanded. He didn't get a medal or public recognition for decades. Why? Because his decision to ignore protocol was technically insubordinate. He'd broken the rules. And more importantly, acknowledging that the Soviet early warning system had nearly caused World War III by mistake would be admitting weakness, admitting that their technology wasn't infallible, admitting that they'd been one nervous officer away from launching a nuclear holocaust based on sunlight and clouds. But let's go deeper, because this story is actually worse than it seems. The Petrov incident wasn't unique. In 1979, a technician at NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, loaded a training tape into the system that simulated a massive Soviet nuclear attack. Except nobody told the officers monitoring the screens it was a simulation. For 6 minutes, the United States military believed they were under nuclear attack. Fighter jets were scrambled. The doomsday plane that the president would use to command nuclear forces during a war was prepared for takeoff. High-level officials were seconds away from waking the president to inform him he needed to authorize a counterstrike. Then, someone realized it was a training tape. 6 minutes. That's how close we came because someone forgot to label a tape properly. Or consider 1995. Russian radar detected a rocket launch off the coast of Norway heading toward Moscow. What they didn't know was that it was a Norwegian scientific rocket studying the northern lights, and Norway had actually notified Russia about the launch weeks earlier. That notification never made it to the right people. So Russian radar operators saw what looked like a submarine-launched nuclear missile, possibly designed to detonate at high altitude and disable their early warning systems right before a larger attack. For the first and only time in history, the nuclear briefcase was activated and brought to Russian President Boris Yeltsin. He had minutes to decide whether to launch a full-scale nuclear response. Fortunately, the rocket's trajectory became clear before he made a decision. But we came terrifyingly close to nuclear war because of a scientific rocket and bureaucratic incompetence. These aren't conspiracy theories or exaggerations. These are documented incidents where human extinction was prevented by luck, individual judgment, or sheer chance. And these are just the ones we know about. Both the United States and Russia still maintain thousands of nuclear weapons on high alert, ready to launch within minutes. The systems monitoring for attacks are more sophisticated now, but they're also more complex, which means more opportunities for catastrophic failure. And the human beings operating these systems are still human, subject to fatigue, stress, miscommunication, and error. Here's what bothers me most about the Petrov incident specifically. His decision was right, but his reasoning was based on assumptions that could have easily been wrong. What if the United States had decided a limited first strike targeting Soviet leadership and command centers was preferable to full-scale attack? What if military doctrine had changed and Petrov didn't know about it? What if it had been 6 missiles instead of 5? Would he have still thought it was a false alarm? His gut instinct saved the world, but gut instinct is not a reliable system for preventing nuclear war. We got lucky. That's it. We got lucky that one man in one bunker on one night made a choice that happened to be correct. And the systems haven't gotten that much better. We've added more technology, more layers, more complexity, but complexity creates fragility. Modern early warning systems process massive amounts of data, and with cyber warfare now a reality, there's the additional risk of deliberate false signals being introduced to trigger a launch. Imagine a sophisticated hacker group or rogue nation managing to spoof U.S. early warning systems to show a Russian launch, or vice versa. Imagine the chaos of trying to verify whether an alert is real when you have 10 minutes to decide the fate of humanity. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction relies on rational actors making rational decisions with perfect information under extreme time pressure. But Petrov's story proves we don't have perfect information. The 1979 training tape incident proves we don't always have rational circumstances. The 1995 Norwegian rocket incident proves that even when notifications are sent, they don't always reach the right people. We're trusting the survival of human civilization to systems that have already failed multiple times, saved only by individuals who chose to question their orders, or by timing that happened to work in our favor. What's even more unsettling is how little this is discussed in public discourse. Most people don't know Petrov's name. Most people have never heard about these near misses. There's this comfortable assumption that nuclear war is something from the past, a Cold War relic that's no longer relevant. But there are still enough nuclear weapons in the world to destroy human civilization several times over. The United States and Russia still maintain massive arsenals on high alert. China is expanding its nuclear capabilities. Pakistan and India, two countries with a history of military conflict, both have nuclear weapons. North Korea is actively developing its nuclear program. The risk hasn't disappeared. We've just stopped paying attention. Petrov died in 2017, largely unknown outside of a small community of people who study nuclear close calls. In his later interviews, he downplayed his actions, saying he was just doing his job and got lucky. But that humility masks a profound truth. On September 26, 1983, the fate of hundreds of millions of people came down to one person's judgment call in a high-pressure situation with incomplete information. And he made the right choice. Next time, and there will be a next time because these systems keep failing, we might not be so lucky. The world almost ended on a random Tuesday night in 1983 because sunlight reflected off clouds and a computer misinterpreted the data. No evil villain, no mastermind plot, just technology failing, and one human being choosing to trust his instinct over his training. That's how fragile this all is. That's how close we've come. And that's how close we could come again. Except next time, the person in Petrov's position might follow protocol instead of questioning it. Sleep well with that thought.